the right way to do wholesaling, to make sure that we know, how to straddle all the different issues that can come into play and do it in a responsible fashion. So, thank you so much.
Sure.
I, also want to take a minute and thank Helen for, your support through this whole transition. We couldn't have done, half of what we've done, half as well, without your, just continued support. So thank you so much.
Welcome, of course. So I just want to do a quick spotlight. Enza, one of the ladies that has an independent insurance company here in the York area, does my insurance on my vacant properties and the properties that I'm going to flip. So I asked her to just come in, and if anybody's having difficulties, getting insurance or looking for another insurance agent, she runs her own. Do you want to?
Sure.
Just give a little spotlight here for yourself, quick.
Thank you, Helen.
So you got all them right there.
Yeah. I'm Enza Byrunis. I'm from Good Apple Insurance Agency located in Dover. I'm an independent agent, so I represent more than one company, which is good news because it doesn't limit me to just one place where I can shop insurance for. So we have multiple companies that we use. We write homeowner policies, the traditional ones. We write even untraditional ones as well. Landlord properties. We write vacant homes. We do write flips and Airbnbs, even though those are getting a little bit tougher, but we still have a market for those as well in the areas where you can still purchase your Airbnb units. Mobile homes, we even write park models in campgrounds as well. That seems to be popular. Actually, even in the Poconos, there's several of those that I have clients up there as well. So it's I have a good resources for even hard to place homes. Some carriers no longer will write log homes. They are still log homes in Pennsylvania. We have places where we can set those policies up as well. We do also provide flood insurance. And even just like a basic policy, a lot of investors want like an actual cash value policy versus a replacement cost policies, which can be expensive. So we work individually with you, depending on the type of property that you're looking to insure. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My phone number is 717-814-5084. And you can also follow me on Facebook at Good Apple Insurance, or look at my website, goodappleiinsurance.com, for my contact information. If anybody has any insurance questions, feel free to ask them. We can respond in the chat or live here as well. Thank you, Helen.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I want to open up today and start by asking if anybody has any questions prior to getting started. Is there information that is pressing that you would like to know before I go into giving you the material? And let me see if you can put it in the chat here for Terry, and she'll read off if not.
Or they're welcome to unmute themselves. and
Yeah,
Chat.
or
Yep.
or unmute yourself and ask away. Because I want to know where you all potentially are, or if it's something that you're trying to understand as far as the whole wholesaling process. No Everybody's
questions?
quiet.
Nobody has any questions about?
I have a question.
How about it?
Contract advisors and seller buyer you're representing. When I represented a buyer, I used the par contract. I know wholesalers use other contracts often. Is there a benefit to one or the other for protecting one or the other?
So we typically, on a wholesale transaction, do not use par contracts. So these properties are off market status and totally use our own individual contracts and each wholesaling company or each wholesaling individuals typically have their own specific contract that they use. So if you came to me with a buyer, I would ask you to use my contract.
And Helen, what is the purpose of that?
It is very a simplistic contract and doesn't get into all the protections that are in the par contract. So it is not protecting, it's not protecting you, it's more so protecting the wholesaler's end of it. So, but you will find and I'll be honest, I don't know, did they accept the par agreement?
Yeah, the wholesalers I worked with were also agents.
Okay. Okay, so typically they won't accept the par agreements. Typically, it's all on our own contract forms.
Chris said if anybody who comments, just speak up so they can hear you.
Okay,
That's all.
okay.
Wow.
Mike is normally a very quiet guy to begin with, so I was gonna say Carolyn can carry the room.
How do you determine what amount you're offering the buyer and your assignment?
Or offering the
The
seller.
seller, yeah. So not the buyer.
Okay, so we'll get right into it then, if she has that question. So in wholesaling, properties are completely off-market transactions. So, and many of the sellers that you will find that want to wholesale a property are estates, out-of-state owners, distressed, and pre-foreclosures are heading into short sales. So when I walk a property with a seller, and here's where your fine line is. So I'm wearing the hat of not a real estate agent. I'm not, but so Terry is the seller, and I would be meeting Terry, and I would greet Terry and say, "Hi, I'm Helen with Operation Elevation. Nice to meet you. How are you today?"
Peachy, Helen, how are you?
Good, thank you. So I want you to know that I am a licensed Pennsylvania agent, but I am here in the capacity to potentially make you a cash offer on your property. Do you have any questions in regards to that?
I don't know, should I?
So I want people to know absolutely first thing that I'm not there in a real estate capacity. And if they don't have any questions for me at that moment, I do not revisit it until the very end. If I know that we can't meet terms for the cash offer that I'm going to presenting them, then I circle back around and then say, I can, if you would like, we can talk about the possibility of putting it in the MLS. So I give them that option at the end if I know that we can't come to terms on the cash offer amount. So when you're walking a property, you're already knowing what ARV is, so after repair value. So you're already gauging what the comps would show for the market would do if that property was in really good condition. So then I am not one to give a person numbers over the phone, although I am one, if I'm talking to somebody on the phone, to find out what it is that they're looking for. But my key to finding out with them is, what's the soft spot? What is it that they're considering a cash offer over listing the house? And building that rapport, because if I can build the rapport with the individual of knowing what it is, then typically you can lock in the transaction and do it as a cash deal. Yeah, John.
Was it suggested that you open a business account with an LLC or something in order to can you do operation elevation? Is that an LLC?
It is an LLC, Operation Elevation LLC.
So John just asked if there was a benefit to doing it under a business entity versus doing it just under your own person.
You do not, and I would highly recommend it. I don't know any individuals in the business that purchases under a name. It's always under a business name with the LLC that's already set up and approved. And you know, you can go online. It's not difficult to, establish your LLC. It's just picking the name and then making sure that it's available and then setting it up. And then doing a basic operating agreement for the LLC. If you're the only one initially getting started within that LLC, it depends my intent is not to grow my LLC. My intent is to operate as Helen Fausnaught running Operation Elevation. So, so when I walk a property, the typical formula for wholesalers going out to a property, so ARV on the house is 100,000 after repair value. So most wholesalers are automatically coming in prior to even knowing what the repairs are of a $65,000 to $70,000 cash offer. I walk the property and I'm like looking at what it's going to potentially cost in repairs. And this is where, 20,000 in repairs, look where you are for a cash offer. I'm at a $45,000 offer for the individual on that particular property. And, there were wholesalers, and right now are some wholesalers that are going a little bit above that purely because of trying to keep their operations flowing through this marketplace. But it hasn't gone much above that. So you have to present to the individual, here I am, you have basically an asset and I am offering you a fraction of what that asset is actually worth.
Let's say 65 to 70% of ARV minus repairs.
Minus repairs, that's correct. So, and Michael just said, hopefully you heard that. So it's 65 to 70% minus repairs is what the cash offer is on a property. Any other questions from? No. So one thing when I'm doing a contract, so I offer them $45,000 cash. And they like, look at me like, are you on crack? I really seriously have gotten that. But and it's that like rapport. So you have to know how to handle my $45,000 offer to an individual. And it's, saying, when I walk the property, I want to comment though on not all the negative things that I'm seeing. I want to make sure that you're pointing out that, oh, this is nice because it has the original woodwork, or, things that the property has to offer, or I can see the possibility of the hardwood floors being refinished. And, but when I'm saying that I could see your hardwood floors being refinished, that's like a $2,000 expense to see those hardwood floors brought back to life. So when you're talking like what's wrong with the house, it's adding in there for me what it is cost-wise for me to bring it back to life, because you're then justifying what that low offer is and why you're giving that low offer on their property, because this is what it's going to cost me to get it to the end result, And then, the other thing that you have in regards to that is you have to factor in your closing. Some of the enticements for the wholesalers, they will offer to pay the 2% transfer tax. So you need to be really specific in your agreement of sale that you're using, what are you paying for seller cost, or sellers will even ask you to pick up their cost. And you need to know what those costs are in your contracts to make sure that X amount, so you're not even caught off guard. Like I'll agree to pay $2,000 towards your closing deal. Anybody, Justin, or you're just,
No, I'm
no,
taking it back.
okay,
Yes,
yes,
based on this, you do your assignment.
okay.
And then I have another question.
Okay, so I get the contract locked in at 45,000. Do I want to do that property as a flip? Or do I want to assign it to somebody else? So my contract specifically says I have the right to assign this contract. So it's an assignment of contract. It's not a purchase contract. I have the right to assign this contract to another individual. So in that process, I find Michael, who is an investor, and I'm like, Michael, I have this property, ARV is 100,000. needs $20,000 in work, I'm like willing to assign this contract over to you for $55,000. Michael's, we walk the property, Michael's like, I'm in. So we do the assignment of the contract. So originally, the original contract, $45,000. All I did was meet with Mike, who I know is on my buyer's list, got him out to the property because I know that this specific property Michael would be interested in. And I just passed it along to Michael. So it is now going from the seller to Michael, and Michael is taking over the assignment of that contract. Cash offer needs to be closed within the time frame that was agreed upon with the seller, which is we typically do a 10 to 14 day close cash offer. So Michael agrees to close on that date. And also Michael, agrees to close with Titan Settlement Services. Because the wholesalers typically will ask their end person, whoever it is, to close with a preferred title company who is familiar with you and your transactions.
So that you can do a one close instead of back to back.
That's correct.
Now, that's a perfect world.
Yep.
I think that and that is very clean.
Mhm.
I think where some of the complications have come in that we've seen with wholesaling is when that property makes it onto the MLS as an assignable contract.
Yep.
And that causes some confusion.
Right.
What's your experience been in that kind of scenario?
So we didn't even hit that yet.
Okay,
So I gave you a clean, like, whole deal.
okay, then I'll
That's
be
like
quiet.
no, but it's good because we're gonna get there. That's a smooth best case scenario, how they go. But now Justin just brought into, another scenario, which is called wholetailing.
Mhm.
So you are wholesaling, not full-blown retailing, but you are trying to get closer to the retail number because you know that if you put it on the market, that you can attract in a wider range of individuals that would be interested in purchasing that property. So you're not extending it out to your fellow investors. You're going out to the regular marketplace.
Because the condition may not be as bad as it needs a total renovation. It might have some retail appeal.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you make it into a cash conventional offering out. So-
How do they get that seller to agree to that term? When usually the seller's like, I don't want people coming to my house, I want a quick sale. But it sits on the market for 3 or 4 months,
Right.
and it's they're basically doing retail, but it's taking.
So here's where, when you ask me to do the right and the wrong way, here's the fine line with what individuals do in the business that is really is unethical. It's called a novation agreement. And individuals typically don't understand what they're signing when they sign that novation agreement. So a novation agreement gives me the right to market your property on the MLS at the increased value. And it also they are typically signing that they give me the right to show that property to outside sources. A lot of times it's not explained like that. They'll use alternative excuses to bring people through the property. And they have no idea sometimes even that it's in the MLS system because it is not fully explained. So it's really a fine line, and I've brought it up because I do not agree with it at all. Like, if you're novating a property, you need to be directly honest with that person that needs to sell to say, hey, listen, your property is going to be marketed in the MLS. And I want you to know that we're going to be bringing people through you know, this property to view it for, you know, potential sale. Yes,
If you do that, do you put a sign out front as selling it?
so it would be the LLC sign typically is in the
Okay.
yard, yeah, not, there's no, yeah. Which is like the fine line, because now it's in the MLS, so now you have to, by law, it's being represented, so, you know, there's been kind of like the hairy situation now. And you'll find this now that the individuals are following through and putting in the appropriate sign in the yard that should have been in, as soon as they did the novation, it should have switched over because it was going into the MLS. And the yard sign then should have been represented by,
One particular company, I think, we're all referring to, usually has in there that owner did not want to sign or whatever. They kind of cover themselves that way.
right, it was what they're doing now. So Michael stated that one of the ways around it is, owner does not want the sign in the yard for the MLS, yeah. Which is accurate. Yep. So, any other questions in regards to that?
How do you, when you have those conversations with sellers, you make them a cash offer based upon X amount,
Yes,
how do you then turn around and explain to them that I'm gonna put it in the property for a higher amount?
mhm.
How does that conversation go and how is it normally received?
So here's what I do. So here's where you're talking, and this is me. Ethically versus, you know, maybe not so ethically. I close on the property. I straight out purchase the property and I do a lot of double closes on my transactions. On the majority of my transactions, I've double closed. And I implement that extra cost because, you know, you're paying the cost of the double transfer and then a little bit of extra cost, but for me, it's worth it. Because that way, there's no fine line of them doing something that it doesn't seem ethical to me. Like I told you that I would purchase your property at X amount of money and that's what I'm doing. And that's what I've always lived by and have done.
And it seems like that's where the relationship always seems to get spoiled from, you know, the observer's perspective, me looking at these situations,
Yep.
is the property owner, the owner of title, doesn't understand some portion of that process between agreeing with, you know, the wholesaler to the end user, doesn't understand that, becomes, unhappy with the margin that's at play.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the other piece of what is done in that type of transaction is they ask to be power of attorney for the transaction. So the individual isn't even there at the closing.
Oh, goodness.
So your seller isn't even there in a novation agreement typically. So the company is having a individual sign for the power of attorney. After it's closed, then they're taking the proceeds to the individual and delivering the proceeds to them after the property closes.
Agent versus a wholesaler. I don't know, because you have your license, your expectations acting as a wholesaler are different, but is there some obligation to advise them that they may want to seek legal counsel in this? Like if they're signing over power of attorney and all that stuff, which is.
If you're wearing a wholesaling hat,
You don't have to,
you do not have to,
because wholesalers aren't licensed in any sort of way, they don't have any real rules to follow.
right. Ethically, though, when I'm a licensed person and I'm doing that, I would not by good conscience. Like I know that they need to sell typically, a lot of people will say to you, I just need to get rid of it. That they hit a wall of whatever it is, whether it's typically an estate and they just can't handle it. And they're like, I want it all gone. And then that's why that's where I typically purchase. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, go ahead.
Quick question to the double closing.
Yes.
That means that you have twice title insurance and all that stuff, or?
So my title insurance, I'm paying upfront title insurance. And then on the secondary, whoever the purchaser is getting their policies. So they're gonna have that cost, yeah. So,
Your title insurance is minimal though, buying cash, right?
it's,
Because you're not getting title insurance for the mortgage company.
well, correct. I mean, it's a little bit less than, but it's still, you know, yeah. Uh-huh, yeah. But for me, when you're doing this and you're affiliated with, and this is where you try and have a win situation, or I'm different than everybody else. You know, me being an agent or, you know, previous broker with Iron Valley, like I'm off market doing my transactions. I want the company to still benefit because they're not collecting a commission or any portion from me because it's an off market transaction. So I want them to benefit somehow. So I want them to benefit on the end of the title work. You know, so it's something coming into the company on the transaction. So, but even doing it off market, when you're doing it off market and you're running a transaction through, say I'm running it through Titan, I'm not running it through the company. So there is, you know, where's the company benefiting? You know, like I want the company to know I'm going to run my transactions through you because this is what I'm doing. You know, so I always try and run that course. So, any other questions on that? Go ahead.
Generally asking.
Mhm.
I watched a few videos before.
Yes.
But not too much into it. That's why I'm asking you that.
Yeah. Mhm.
I heard you don't necessarily need cash to go to closing, right? If you offer someone 45,000 and you don't have them, you can still, because of the double closing and so on.
Okay, so if you're double closing, you have to close. So you need the funds to be able, if you are going from, I've found the end buyer in Michael, so I'm assigning my contract over. I do not. So on the closing statement, when Michael is purchasing it, Michael knows that he is purchasing that property at 45,000, but I have a $10,000 consult fee. And that's how it reads on the HUD one.
No, okay.
But because you're not working as an agent, you don't have to pay.
No, company's not involved in the
Okay.
transaction. The only thing I'm trying to do is benefit them by doing title work through the company. And this is where, you know, I talked with Chris and I, you know, mentioned to Terry and whatnot, as far as individuals within the company, you know, doing this process, you know, because it's big, like it's big throughout not just the state of Pennsylvania, but it's very big throughout the whole entire country. And at some point in time, Philadelphia already has restrictions on it, like you have to go in and apply for a license in the Philadelphia area to do wholesaling, you know, because they're looking at the volume of properties that are now being sold this way. And there are no restrictions on how it's being handled or the ethical thing. You know, the allegations that somebody can say against somebody else, you know, in these transactions, because typically only present is you and the seller, and they're signing off on your contract, you know,
And giving you power of attorney perhaps.
and perhaps giving you power of attorney.
Firstborn child.
So, yeah. So, and sometimes when you, and we all know, if you are in an emotional state, you don't hear everything that's being said to you. You know, you're keying in on certain points. And I think that sometimes that's where individuals take advantage of situations.
And there's an element of duress, like you might not be dealing with a very sophisticated seller
Correct.
who may not be kind of understanding a lot of concepts like power of attorney.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. So the other thing that you can do when you're wholesaling, you have the assignment of contract, you have the novation, which I do not like to do the novation contracts, because that's what you were talking about. You also can do a joint venture, which is very popular, so, and I'm only using Mike because Michael's sitting here in front of me, so Michael is another wholesaler, I'm a wholesaler. I contact Michael and say, hey, Michael, like I just got this property at, 1010 Hill Street. This is the price on it. Can you move it for me? And I have done this, and I do throw things out to other wholesalers in the area. Can you move this property? If you move this property for me, we'll split the fee on it. So you'll make 5, I'll make 5. And Michael finds the end buyer. We go to closing. Michael's LLC is
Grossman LLC.
Grossman LLC. So Michael's assignment fee shows, a consult fee shows on the HUD one, operation elevation consult fee shows on the HUD one, and it goes directly from the seller to Michael's end individual that he has, and we close the same way. So that's called a JV transaction. So it's very popular to do.
The same as bird dogging?
Bird dogging, yeah, so Michael asked about bird dogging, so, and you'll see this on Facebook a lot. If you find me a seller and I get them under contract, I will in turn at close pay you $1,000 fee. So yeah. So, there are a lot of fine lines that you're like walking when
That
you're,
one's right on.
yep,
Yeah, bird dogging, because that bird dog has no equitable interest in the property. So, or is that a commission? And are they being paid a commission as, or they're not licensed,
right,
are they, by law allowed to collect a commission?
right. So it's listed with us as a consult fee.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes on the HUD one.
If I am a licensed agent, can I do that? If I come across a house and say, it's a piece of shit, and I don't want to wholesale, but I can bring it to Helen, she can give me some money. Is that a thing that's doable? I was always told that was so sketchy.
That may go from bird dogging to referral.
Oh, yeah, that's a good name for it.
Yeah,
Oh,
And-
bird dogging.
but when it, yeah,
Because you as a licensee in the state of Pennsylvania, can you be paid a commission by anyone other than broken?
Of course not.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with all the structures in place for the state of Pennsylvania, but
right,
that's the way it is,
right,
the way it reads. Right.
right. But you'll see it advertised everywhere now. There are tons of postings for individuals looking for properties and incentives out there. I recently saw an individual looking for a high-level apartment complex, and he actually offered 50 grand. If anybody brought him
Oh.
an apartment complex. So yeah, there's all kinds of incentives that people will offer out there, and it really is, the standard of what do you want to be known as, ethics wise, because I mean, especially this area, it's a small area. Are you doing things right or you're not? And if you're not doing things right, you're one of the ones being talked about. And is that how you want to be represented out in the community? I want to stand in good standing wherever I'm doing business in, and want to be proud of the business that I'm doing, and want it to be a win-win situation. I don't want to feel that somebody's distressed and I'm taking advantage of their situation. I want them to know I'm being as fair as possible. I'm also a business entity and will do what I can to make it a fair transaction for both parties. But I'm also a business. So the other thing I like to do that I haven't done here in Pennsylvania is a joint venture where a seller's property needs X amount of work. And I'll say to the individual, I'll come in and do the work on your property. And then, so we agree on a purchase price. And anything over that purchase price, I need to put $10,000 into this property for repairs. But my after repair value will be 150,000. So we agreed on 100,000. I put the $10,000 into the property, and now the profit is $40,000 in between, and we agreed to split that profit. So off the top, I get my money back for repairs, and then we split the end profit. I like to offer that as a solution for individuals, because it gets them, if they don't need the quick cash, I have the ability to come in and do the work for them. And then it's more of a fair transaction that I feel good about doing, and increasing the money that I can potentially get for them, because I know what the value of their property is.
Do you have a contract to do that?
There is a
Right, but
contract to
do-
do that.
Are
It's
you working
separate
with an
than.
attorney in this situation, or do you just have a contract that they sign?
The contract was originally drawn up by an attorney, so it's a contract that is used specifically for that purpose, to do a joint venture contract.
But
yeah.
you work with your attorney, or? is this
Originally,
one
I
that you
did.
can get-
Originally, for the contract, we originally drew up a contract that I could use to offer that out as a means for a tool to be able to do these transactions. Yeah. And it's kind of catching on. I know there are a few other wholesalers now offering that here in the area. Nobody that you probably would know of, because they don't. Yeah.
I know some builders kind of backed into it that way. I mean, you can approach it from either end.
Yeah, yeah. And it really then really turns into, in my opinion, a good win situation for a lot of parties. If it's something that they don't need to be absolutely out of, and they just want the cash and they want to go. You know, that you're increasing something that they're walking away with, and couldn't have done that if it wasn't for you and what you have to offer as part of your service. Yeah. Anybody have are there any questions there? So when you're marketing for wholesale properties, it's typically, Facebook is really, really popular with leads coming in for wholesalers. Like, it's a high percentage of where you get leads from, or where wholesalers get leads from. And circumstances are, like I had said, the other way is you actually hire a team to track down, and pull lists. So I'm looking in a specific area. I'm pulling a list of the estates. I'm pulling the list of my out-of-state purchasers. I'm pulling the estates as pre-foreclosure properties. And then I'm also, what I like to do is I like to drive around. It's called driving for dollars. So I'm driving in communities, because I'm out anyway. So I'm looking for the distressed properties that are sitting, that look in need of a lot of work. And you would be surprised. You start with putting on a little Post-it note on the property saying, I would be interested in potentially making an offer on your property. Here is my contact information. And then I skip trace it. So I take the address and then do the skip trace on trying to locate who it is, who's the owner of the property. And then I'll start reaching out to whoever it may be, or finding the source then, because it could be an estate that's left, and who's in charge of it. So we try and skip trace it down to see if we can't find who the ultimate owner of the property is.
If someone happens to be home and you stop by there,
Yes.
what does that conversation look like? And you come about that tax relief.
I would say, I have somebody looking in this area for an investment property. Have you thought about selling your home? And then you respond either way. And then I would immediately, if they're there, typically they are not, but if they are, I would immediately try and get in the door. And say, would you by chance have time right now to walk me through the property? I'd love to see your property and see if we couldn't help you in any way.
Another question, when you do the walkthrough and go with the repairs, do you already have so much experience to know, hey, this is going to cost me $20,000 to remodel it?
Correct.
Okay.
So, and you know, now with the increase in, cost of supplies, you know, you really need to get familiar with, I actually have, which I could send out to everybody. I actually have a list of cost of everything as far as redoing stuff. I would probably maybe put an increase on it because it was done probably last fall, so it's almost a year old. And supply costs have definitely gone up since then. But what you don't think about, and you know, this is like doing a flip. You know, I'm looking at it as if I'm flipping the property because that's an exit strategy for me. Like when I look at a house with a potential seller, what's my exit strategy? What really do I want to do with this house? Am I looking at it for me as the possibility of the flip? And I ask them if I can film it. Typically, if there's a tenant in there, they say no. If there's not a tenant in there, they will typically allow you to film it. So your question was, if they won't allow you to show the property, how do you sell it? And that's how I sell it. I ask them if I can do the vid as I'm walking through with them, and I'm getting what a potential investor would be, is getting the video that I'm now taking of their property. So,
Your list that you just mentioned. so
yes,
Does it also have labor costs on it, or like a?
it does.
To give you an idea of.
Yeah, it gives the whole breakdown, because you know, when you're doing a property, it's like a door. And I'm just using this because it's in front of me. I'm not just purchasing a new door to put up a door. I'm purchasing the fixtures also. I'm purchasing the hinges. I'm purchasing the doorknob. So you have to have complete cost of whatever it is that you are transitioning out. And I think that some flippers look at big things, but they don't look at the things that are going to add up really, really quickly. Like your doorknobs now, you know, doorknobs are expensive. You're paying, like, for a box of doorknobs, you're now paying, you know, $85 for a box of doorknobs. You know, you're getting 8 knobs in there. So you got to factor in that, because do you need 2 boxes of doorknobs? And then the hinges. You know, how many hinges do you need? Because if you're changing out colors, it's like changing it all out to be standard across the board. So it's looking at all of those things. And when you're looking at a bathroom, you know, the expense of a bathroom, when I'm looking at it, are you keeping the tile? You know, are you getting rid of the tile? Are you keeping the vanity? You know, if you're replacing the vanity, are you replacing the fixture to the vanity? So you now need a new spigot, you know? Are you replacing the toilet? Okay, and which typically I do on all the properties. Don't forget about the seal that cost you another $10 to put under the toilet. Don't forget the light bulbs that cost you X amount because I'm putting up a new fixture for lighting. Don't forget about the light bulbs that are costing $1 a piece or $1.50 a piece. You know, so it's those things that investors or newer individuals that are looking to do a property don't factor in as far as like an end cost. And then when you're looking at your end numbers, it's like, wow, how did I, you know, get there? So. Anybody have any questions over here? I want to make sure I'm touching on everything that I need. It's crucial though and just like real estate, wholesaling, it's crucial to have your marketing in place. And if you're not marketing online, getting to meetups, that's typically how I get the majority of my transactions is through individuals at meetups. So I network and, get my name out there as far as being a cash purchaser and, am open to like doing any kind of transactions. Am now partnered up with one of the new guys that I had met from a meetup and trying avenues like that to see what's going to work or, you see if it works, and if it works, then you continue. And if it don't, you have the learning curve to move on to the next process. So, but yeah, the meetups are typically, I went to 3 last week. I've gone to 3 so far this week. And, I try and get a takeaway or, like I've always referred to it as a golden nugget. So whenever I go to a meetup, like I met 2 new individuals last night that, will potentially they have a wholesaling individuals over in this area. He doesn't do it, but one of the guys was a connection for somebody that does work this area. So it was getting that connection, and then somebody else who's looking to do transactions. So anybody else question wise? Justin, you have anything that's at the forefront for you?
No.
I think the other thing is, when I talked about marketing and you get your leads in through marketing systems, that's why you'll see postcards going out. You'll see people, the restrictions now have been restricted on the text messages though. So they have really slowed down because of the information that you have to now disclose on your text messages. So it did get regulated, and you do have to put your company name now, and you have to put the contact information, and you have to put to opt to stop and give them an opt out. So when I went to one of the last meetups that I had gone to last week, they went back to cold calling and are having a lot of success cold calling. So they are actually cold calling, their virtual assistants are cold calling 700 individuals a day.
Virtual assistants offshore.
Yeah, so here's the thing, many of the companies have VAs, virtual assistants. And one of the things that when you're searching for your virtual assistant or you typically talk to an individual that has connections to virtual assistants, because you want to have virtual assistants that speak very good English and hire those individuals in that have experience in real estate. So there are some companies out there where they're specializing in that now and offering that specifically as a service. So you want definitely connected, because you're counting on that initial contact with that VA calling all these people, but your process is set up. The process is set up where they also are meeting certain goals, as far as 700 calls, because I purchased a list, they're calling the 700 individuals. What kind of return are we getting out of that? What kind of follow-ups are we getting? So you want out of 700 calls, you want viable leads off of that 700 calls. Out of each 100, you want 10 viable, which would then cut it down to 70. And then it typically appointment wise from that 70 typically goes down to 7. So for every 700 people that I'm calling, I'm shooting for 7 appointments. And out of that 7 appointments, then I'm trying to get 2 contracts at minimum. That's the kind of numbers that wholesalers are typically working on now.
So if you go into it with that mindset that you're gonna, that's your return, that'll help you from getting discouraged in the rejection
Right.
in that.
And that's, and one of the individuals that spoke last week said, he will not call. Like he's not, doesn't feel like he's an asset on the phone. He's an asset when you put him in front with once the appointments are set up, but not the initial calling, because you have to get through. It's like regular real estate and calling people, and you're cold calling and you're trying to get, people are reacting on the other end of the phone. Can you take it?
And you have to be quick on your feet, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I would not want that to be that individual. I'm telling you right now, to sit there and do that. Like it takes a special person to be able to do that.
You have probably pick your person pretty well too, because most of the calls I get, they're pretty poor at what they're doing.
Mhm.
They're not great at converting at all.
Right.
It's fine, they're making their calls to get their calls in.
Right. So anybody else have anything?
You do the typical cost for like a VA. like an
It-
hourly rate or something like that.
It's really inexpensive. You're probably, it's only a few dollars.
Yeah.
It's like $3.50 an hour was the last
Yeah, I was
time I
gonna say,
heard a quote for a
It's still
VA.
like Chinese
yeah,
children
it
and
was like
stuff.
$3 an hour.
Vietnamese, Philippines.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the one we used to use was like $3 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Uh,
actually have something to say about it, because I have one myself,
Mhm.
and you can go through like a virtual assistant company. And I paid them $5 an hour, but he wants to go direct with me now, so I'm actually taking it down to $4 an hour. Because those VA companies, they're only giving that person maybe $2 an hour, and mine was, it's in the Philippines.
Okay, yeah,
So you can also find ones that are direct, and you can pay, $3-4 an hour. Some companies will actually charge 10 or 15 an hour for a VA, and that VA is still only getting like, $2 or $3 an hour. But there are ones, when I was looking for my insurance ones, there are ones that specialize for realtors for that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's interesting. That's good.
So the only other thing that, does anybody on here have any questions? Is anybody asking anything?
There's nothing in the
No.
chat yet. No.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm addressing or, across the board to make sure everybody has the basics and the fundamentals and all of that they want as far as this being a potential opportunity. So there's a lot of no's, in the wholesaling business, a lot of no's. That's why I like to network and connect with other wholesalers that will pass you transactions along, and sometimes it hits all at once. I think I had six transactions all came together at the same time, and I passed 3 of them along and then ended up wholetailing one of them. So that was number 4, and then I rehabbed the last 2. So opportunities open, you just need to keep talking to people. And that's also the key in real estate, is who you're talking to and who you're networking with. So, and the other thing that I'm doing upcoming is, and I always send this out for one of the groups that I really, really like is April Crosley. And I don't know if people are familiar with April or not. She's like one of the top female investors in the United States. And April does like a coaching program, a wholesaling program, and has put a program together where they not only will look at your transaction, they partner up with you, they do private funding or find individuals within the group who does private funding. They do the marketing, so it's like the complete package that they're offering. So if somebody is interested in becoming a wholesaler, I strongly suggest, especially if you're one person, that you get into a support system like that can train you. And if it's something that you really want to roll with, that you have all the support that you need. It's like here being at Iron Valley and being an agent. You know, you're fortunate that at this particular office and, you know, in 30 years, I've come across a lot of owners and a lot of companies and whatnot. And, you know, you want owners who have heart that truly, like you have here, truly want you to be successful in the endeavors that you take on, you know. So whatever business it is, that's the kind that you try and surround yourself with, because their success and your success, our success, all goes hand in hand. And that's where I always say you rise to the top together.
That's a great point about being a solo operator and all the different things that you have to do this right. Because, you know, where are you getting the people to call, the lists, the funnels, and do you have the time to put in 700 phone calls to get, you know, if this is not your full-time job, how do you have time to do that?
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. If it's something that you're trying to pursue, it is worth belonging to a group like that already has their systems in play and offers the same kind of environment that Iron Valley offers. Like you feel part of the group, and you know, that specific group is throughout the whole United States. So she does transactions with everybody. I actually just talked to her today, and she was on her way to Tennessee. She's doing a new concept down there where they bought properties and they're fixing them for seniors, and it's going to be like a communal living area where they're independent, but they're having units, and then they have a common kitchen to make sure that the seniors, because there's homeless seniors down in that area. And April's individuals, they found that there was a need for this. So she's extending out into looking at that avenue, and, you know, which is, you know, for me is nice because I'm like watching it unfold. And for me, I'm like wanting to do affordable housing projects potentially in other parts of the country in a few years after my kids graduate. So I want to take and build and learn all I can now to be able to take that into communities that truly need housing opportunities.
You don't have to look too far.
No, you didn't have to look too far at all. So on that note, anybody else?
Just a quick, I mean, from my perspective, from a broker side of things, it seems like the real gray area, the real difficulty, all the hazards come whenever you cross from wholesaling, whether that is to find inventory for your flip, to JV, to resell that property. That's all pretty cut and dry, and you can do that without too many difficulties.
Correct.
Whenever you cross over that line into that wholetailing arena, that's when you really start to get into issues, because at that point, who are you representing as the agent listing it? Are you representing the person who has the contract or the person who owns the property? And how does that work from a licensing perspective?
Right.
How do you handle disclosures? And how do you handle title? Because the person who's selling the property doesn't hold the title of the property. How do you do mortgage when the person selling the property doesn't have title to the property?
Mhm.
And that gets to be the hazardous area that I don't think we would be talking about this today if that scenario wasn't out there in the open right now, causing problems for buyers, sellers, and agents.
Right. I absolutely agree. That's why I prefer to close on those transactions before I put them in the MLS as a wholesale.
Oh.
Because then you know, because really, who is responsible for the disclosure? And on a lot of those transactions, they would not give you a disclosure. So who's doing it now? Who's filling it out?
Right.
You know, because you have this assignment contract in this novation that shows you that it's giving me the right. You're the seller. You gave me the right to now sell this property, whether you know it or not. So who fills it out?
Yeah.
Who fills out the disclosure?
And me as the unsuspecting, uneducated, title holder of the property, maybe I have not been made aware that it's my responsibility under the law of the state of Pennsylvania. I have to do that disclosure.
Right.
So the end user, do they have a channel to come back on me for not disclosing? I don't know.
It's unfolding.
Yeah.
There's some suits going on that's unfolding that
Yeah.
with what's occurred with those transactions. That's all yeah.
Now I have a question. It's not generally spoken, general, kind of the expectation set that a wholesale property is in need of.
Doesn't matter, but it does not matter what the conventional wisdom is. The property owner needs to disclose under this law of the state of Pennsylvania. And if I haven't done that, even though my signature doesn't even show up on the HUD, I sold it, and I have that requirement. So, even if I wasn't made aware of it, the end user could come back to me, even though I never met that end user.
Yeah, it's accurate.
And that's why the wholesaling
Mhm.
and these, one close situations get pretty kind of hairy. Now, if it's among professionals, sharks know they're swimming with sharks. They're grown folks, they're investors, they're professionals. They're aware of those risks, and it's okay. But whenever you bring the general consumer into the equation, now it gets dodgy. And now you have a consumer of real estate services who's the seller, a consumer of real estate services who's the buyer, a professional or two in the middle who are maybe manipulating the situation, maybe getting into it. So that's where it starts to get fuzzy, but to wholesale all day long like Helen does it, I mean, that's not difficult to see that it's being done the right way. I mean, that's.
No, but when you put a property in the MLS and you're putting owner of record, because really, I mean, they're putting it in there as they have the assignment of they don't own the property.
Right.
They have the rights to, disperse the property, but you don't own it. You didn't close on it yet.
Yeah.
So it does go back to the original individual. The shady things that I don't like is those individuals most of them truly do not know what's occurring. And I call it for what it is, and you're doing it. Only reason you're doing wholetailing is because you know that you have that asset, you have the ability, and in this marketplace that you're cashing in on that particular property at that increased value, and you're typically unethical about how you're doing that transaction.
And what's the spread there? What's the gain in that? You're saving on title costs, 1% of transfer and carrying costs, right?
Yeah, so they're not doing it because if they had to close on all of those transactions, which are, we're talking, about a specific company. If they're doing 30 transactions in a month and they're trying to wholesale, 20 of those transactions, it's a significant amount of capital that you need to have specifically to do that aspect of your
It
business.
slows down the pipeline.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. I've had conversations with a lot of folks about this, and this has been the most enlightening and helping me, in my mind,
Mhm.
separate the different channels and the different avenues, so thank you.
Mhm. So, did you have another? Yeah, no, we're good.
Not right now, but I
Okay.
have your number, so.
You do have my number, so if anybody has any other questions or whatnot, you can always reach out to me. Typically text message me and I'll get back to you, 717-578-4630. So thank you all for attending today. The only other thing I was going to touch on quickly, I probably should, because I was going to, how much time do we have? Do we have time?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I was gonna talk about the foreclosure market because that has been my specialty market. My last 3 flips I've bought have this year that I'm working on. My last one is a foreclosure. And as they're trickling into the marketplace, it's going to be something that's going to open up because, you know, one of the things that I keep saying over and over again is we had foreclosures from prior to COVID that didn't hit the market, and then COVID happened. So you have 4 years of foreclosures that are going to be coming into the marketplace across the United States that haven't hit yet. So it's definitely something that you could watch and specialize in. And if you're working with investors, present them out there because you know how to sell a foreclosure and whatnot, you know where to look for them at. And then there's also your short sales that will be opening up because all those people that took on that, they did
Forbearance.
the forbearance, thank you. They did the forbearance and whatnot and didn't realize some of the specific things of how that was working, and then they're caught and they owe all of this money and now they need out from that transaction. So there's a lot of assets sitting. So the foreclosures, though, typically in the MLS are under the REO. Some people put property in there by mistake, but that RE, I know, is real estate owned asset. And it means that somebody else owns the asset, not the individual. It's either the government or a specific bank. So it's not a standard sale. So when you're putting property into the MLS, make sure if it's not a foreclosure that it's checked as a standard sale, because I keep seeing more and more of them in there wrong. And then people are wondering why on Zillow or Google or, you know, things that their house hit as a foreclosure, and it's because that box was checked wrong and it's marked as a foreclosure on the market. But there will definitely be a market for foreclosures coming up, the opportunity for purchasing, and if you're looking for flips coming up and rentals, that's going to be the marketplace that's going to be yielding very high, in my opinion, of 30 years of that being my specialty. So again, you can look under HUDHomestore.com, look under Home Steps for your Fannie Mae's, Freddie Mac for your, which is Home Steps for those. The USDA now is putting their foreclosures online. The Veterans Administration has their foreclosures online. And you can watch what's coming available, like go on auction.com and you can see what's going to be hitting with your local sheriff sales in specific areas. So put the state or your area in there and you can actually see what properties are going to be coming up as foreclosures in those specific areas.
How's the competition at those sales? Pretty stiff?
The online auctions right now, the ones I did well with the 3 that I got. And I think that it was a matter of it slipping through the cracks. People weren't paying attention to that. Now their pricing points are shifting a little bit. Michael, I mentioned that there's one in New York on Hess Road, and the value that they're like, you can purchase this property today. And it's like I said, 169,000, you know, market value is 199. I'm like, it doesn't work. So you need to know your numbers and you need to gauge it on properties that are sight unseen. those properties, like I walked the exterior, but, weren't in the properties. So it's trying to base it on that and, still come out on top.
I see a lot of those say that they may have liens on them and you may, how do you determine what liens may exist and what you have to pay and don't have to pay?
On a foreclosure,
Just any that I've seen like auction.com and stuff like that, they say some of them will be wiped clean and some of them may not, and
so one of the properties that I had purchased through an auction site had said that. And there was a trash bill, which they tracked down. The trash bill was almost $4,000. That was it.
it's like 30 years of trash.
Yeah, it was a long time. So they picked up the trash bill, but they wouldn't give the water meter reading. So it's like, that water meter reading can be,
That's the big one.
mhm. So it's like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna find a way to get that water meter reading to make sure that what's, so here the funny thing is, so we ended up getting the water meter reading. And then the funny thing was, they wanted a breakdown then from the water company on like the usage. They were provided with a picture of the meter with the final read, but then they wanted. So here's what happens when it's on like an auction.com and they're saying about specific things. If they have the breakdown of the record of usage, they can get reimbursed for that cost. So whoever the current individual is that bought that property, so if it was sold off at, as part of the package deal, because that the assets are sometimes sold off to conglomerates that are buying. So, and that's what happened with this specific property. The end result is that that's what it was. They can go back and get reimbursed if they can show the breakdown of those bills. They're getting reimbursed from the original individual that sold that property. So they could basically double dip, because if you don't have to go in and get it, they're collecting it from you, and then, they're still billing the original person some portion.
You find that they exist, you just go to the title and do a title search, or
What's that?
that these liens exist, how do you determine that?
There had been a title company that I had used that would pull that stuff for me. Yeah. And that's just building rapport with the people that you're working with. If you're giving them consistent business, you work it out. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, so I'll end on that note.
Good stuff. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, report.